My name is Tommy Clayton. I'm the lead pastor here. I'd like to extend a welcome to you on behalf of our church. We have some little cards that we put in our tithe and donation box in the back. And if you have a question after the service today, or if you need help, if you need counseling, if you want to talk to somebody, you can fill that card out. If you have a prayer request you'd like for us to lift up the Lord on your behalf, we'll certainly do that. So at the end of the service, you'll be given an opportunity to do that after we have the Lord's Supper. But I just want to thank you for being here today. All the places that you could have worshipped, I'm grateful that God brought you here. Hey, can you turn the volume down a little bit? I'm getting kind of a barrel ring up here. Yeah, that's much better. Thank you. Well, turn to Psalm chapter 90. Psalm chapter 90. I know we normally have somebody come up here and read scripture, but this is a little bit of a different message. I'm going to have some selected scriptures. It's not one passage we're going to be in. And if you're here today for the first time, you have just walked into around the middle of a new series that Jeff and I started. We're taking a little break from the Gospel of Mark. We'll be back there in about 3 weeks, and then the holidays will be here upon us. The name of this series is Don't Waste Your Gifts. And it could just as easily be called Don't Waste God's Gifts, because every good and perfect gift we have comes from above, right? It comes from God. And in some ways, we're stewards of those gifts. God entrusts them to us. If you didn't hear Jeff's message last week about don't waste your talents, you need to download that. It's on our website, www.GraceLifeFlorida.com. You can watch it. You can listen to it. It's a very helpful, very great message. It talked about how the way that we view God really determines the risk that we're willing to take with the gifts that He's entrusted to us. And I couldn't agree any more than that. And I think that would be the same case today. We're going to talk about time. We're going to talk about time. Time is a gift. Time is precious. Time is a gift from God. And if we're not careful, we'll easily squander that gift. And honestly, this may be one of the most important messages I've studied for myself personally. I hope it's the same for you. We're facing, I think, a tremendous cultural challenge right now. Some people might even call it a crisis. And I don't like sounding the alarm. We don't do that a lot from this pulpit. But this is something I think really requires serious reflection. I think a few generations from now, our grandchildren, maybe our great-grandchildren, this will be one of the things they look back on and they think, or maybe they say, why in the world wouldn't we acknowledge this problem exists? And maybe beyond that, why did we refuse to do anything about it? If you're going to solve problems, you've got to confront them. You've got to face them. You've got to acknowledge the 500-pound elephant in the room. And listen, part of my responsibility as a pastor is to know the culture in which I live and breathe. To know the cultural time I live in, and to keep my finger on the pulse of that culture. I want to know what issues face you and me in 2017 in Central Florida. I want to know that so that I can engage people in more meaningful ways. If I'm just clueless, out to lunch, naive, I'm not going to be a very helpful pastor to you. If I'm just holed up in a study somewhere in an ivory tower and just all I ever do is read the Bible, but I don't talk to people and I'm not informed, I'm not going to be very helpful to you. And so I try to do that. Jeff and I try to stay informed. We try to stay connected. And I think one of the biggest issues facing our culture right now, honestly, is how we think about time. Nobody's mouth is going to drop open at that, and you're probably going to yawn and think, tell me more, Pastor. Well, I'm going to tell you a lot. If we don't think about time the right way, we won't use it the right way. Would everyone agree with that? If you don't think about God's gifts the right way, you certainly won't use them. You'll either neglect them or you'll abuse them. And both of those are wasting God's gift. And that's a serious issue. So time wasting reveals itself in a number of ways. I'm not going to address all of those today, because the very thing I'm going to call you to fight against, I would be encouraging you to do. To be so scatterbrained and distracted and think about 50 things instead of one thing. So this may be a surprise to some of you, what I'm going to talk about. I think one of the chief symptoms of our time wasting today is our busyness. Shocker. You think, wait a minute, a pastor is going to talk to me about the propensity we all have to waste time, and he's going to prove that we're time wasters by pointing to our busyness. Yeah, that's right. I sure am. That's exactly what I'm going to do today. I hope you'll do that. I heard about a woman from another country who came to visit the United States. She didn't speak English. She was trying to learn it, and eventually she started introducing herself as, "Hi, I'm busy." You know why she did that? Because just about everybody that she met in America, and I think she came through New York, she would ask them, "How are you?" And they would say, "I'm busy." I'm busy, I'm very busy. So she thought it was a traditional American greeting, a custom. She started introducing herself that way. That was who she was, and I think that's what most of us are and what most of us will become if we're not careful. Busy, and you know, busyness is not a sin in and of itself, but I'm talking about the kind of busy that leaves you weary, leaves you spent, leaves you exhausted, leaves you unproductive, scatterbrained. That's the kind of busyness I'm talking about. Let me quote just a few people, okay? Kevin DeYoung wrote a book called Crazy Busy. It's really helpful if you want to get it. It's very, very small, very easy to understand and read. He said this: we are here and there and everywhere. Sounds like a Dr. Seuss book, doesn't it? We are here, there, and everywhere. We are distracted. We are preoccupied. We can't focus on the task in front of us. We don't follow through. We don't keep our commitments. We are so busy with a million pursuits that we don't even notice the most important thing slipping away. It's kind of like the famous Martha and Mary exchange with Jesus. You remember Martha? The text says that, you know, Jesus came to their house. He was teaching. Mary sat at the feet of Jesus, which is always where you find her in the New Testament when you're reading the story. She's always at the feet of Jesus, listening, worshiping, adoring Him, loving Him, believing Him. And Martha is always doing stuff. She's busy. She's frenetic. And the text says that she was distracted with much serving. The text says that. When Jesus confronted her, He said, "You are anxious and troubled about many things." So that is the kind of busyness that I'm talking about. You're anxious, you're stressed out, you're very troubled, you're very distracted. And then Jesus, you know, Martha came to Him and said, "Jesus, tell my sister to help me. She's not helping me." And Jesus said, "No, I'm not going to do that. Your sister's chosen the good portion. She's chosen the right thing for this moment in a limited amount of time that I've given her as a gift to her life. And her portion will not be taken away from her." I think so often we choose things with the time God gave us that are going to be taken away. In the long run, they're not really going to matter. They're going to dissolve, they're going to evaporate, they're going to be yesterday's news. They're going to be so far down in your Facebook feed box that it's not even going to matter. And God's calling us to choose the good portion. Here's another quote. This is by a worship pastor. The other one was by a theologian and a pastor. This is a worship pastor. He says, "We live in the most fast-paced, word-obsessed, information-obese, non-stop culture that has ever existed. The 21st century is an incubator of hysteric busyness. We go from place to place, from thing to thing, from dream to dream. We have cultural ADD, attention deficit disorder, a poverty of attention, a complete societal inability to stabilize ourselves upon one thing." Now, anybody disagree with that? When you look around and when you look at your own heart, I know this may not hit every single person the same way, but I hope it hits all of us in some way. Well, maybe you can help somebody else if you conquer this by God's grace. Here's one more. Ed Welch, a researcher and a writer and pastor. Always busy. This is the symptom he's giving of this busyness. Always busy. Never enough time. Pushing toward deadlines. Fitful sleep. Working late. Intolerant of interruptions. That would include children's interruptions. Putting projects over people. I could have just been talking about a CEO of a company, or the middle manager, or the stay-at-home mom who is homeschooling 3 children. For some, it feels like life is driving them. There is simply so much to do in so little time. Tim Chester wrote a book called The Busy Christian's Guide to Busyness. No joke. Sounds like a boring read, doesn't it? This is what he said. He gives 10 diagnostic questions to see whether or not you fit this description. So check this out. Test yourself, okay? Number 1, do you regularly work 30 minutes a day longer than your contracted hours? Check.
Preach.
Hey, that's not a pity party. I love what I do. There's some uniqueness in some ways of being a pastor. I don't clock in and out. Ever. Hell. Okay. Do you check work emails and phone messages at home? Check. All right. Has anyone ever said to you, "I didn't want to bother you because I know you're so busy"? Check. Okay. Do your family or friends complain about not getting enough time with you? Check. Do you often feel tired during the day or find your neck and shoulders aching? I'm no neck and shoulders thing. My whole body hurts most of the time. Do you often exceed the speed limit while driving? Check. Do you pray with your children, or if you don't have children, with Christian friends regularly? Do you have enough time to pray? Do you have a hobby in which you are actively involved? See, a lot of Christians will say, that's bad. That's a bad thing. You don't need a hobby. You got enough. You rethink that maybe. Do you eat together as a family or household at least once a day? So those are just 10. There's more, but I thought that might be pertinent for especially those of you that have a job. And the stay-at-home thing is a job, I can tell you, a bigger job than what I do. So we're really in the middle of a cultural phenomenon right now in America. We're seeing statistics that tell us people have never been more exhausted, they've never been more stressed out, they've never been more burnt out. There's more books and documentaries on this than I've ever seen before. I couldn't even read enough on this. I finally just had to shut down the extra biblical study that I do for a message and say, man, I can't take this anymore. This is sad. It's making me sad. I just want to read the good news. Does God have help for us? Yes. So we're in the middle of this cultural phenomenon. People are more exhausted and burned out. They've never had less time to live healthy, productive, enjoyable lives. But people are living on caffeine. They're living on monster drinks. They're texting while they're driving. Guys, this is concerning. It concerns me. Because I see it all the time. I mean, I feel the temptation. You get an urgent text and you happen to look down and see it. But I'm telling you, everywhere I go, I'm surrounded by people. They are texting while they're going 60, 70 miles an hour. And I just want to know what is so important. It's the whole busyness thing. And it's not something you can slap somebody's wrist and say, don't text while you're driving. It's an addiction because we're addicted to busyness. We are. I think all of us struggle with that. Maybe not texting while driving, but other ways. I heard of a yoga center that just opened in Canada. When I first read this, I laughed. But then I kept reading it, and I'm like, this place is going to blow the doors off. They put a mattress on the floor, and they forced all the yoga people to take a 45-minute nap. That's part of their class. And I laughed too, but the reason is because everyone's already so maxed out on their time and so exhausted. So that's what the class offers. It's like you leave work and go take a 45-minute nap and then do some yoga, and they're blowing the doors off the place. What does that tell you about the society and the culture that we live in? People feel enslaved. They feel trapped. They feel like they're robots. They're mindless zombies. And yet, those same statistics that say we're more exhausted, we're more wearied, we're more burned out, maxed out, don't have any time, it also says that people find time to watch kittens breakdancing on YouTube every day for hours. Amen. And comment about it. And they find time to put something in their Facebook feed telling you what you're supposed to be outraged at that day. Some people are laughing, some people don't like that. I'm telling you right now, as your pastor, I love you. I follow everybody in my church that I follow on Facebook. Man, these are strange times, aren't they? I get stressed. I hardly ever want to check my Facebook anymore because it's people basically without so many words saying, be angry at this, be outraged at this, protest this, update this. I just want to unfollow you sometimes. I want to unfollow myself. It's like I've got enough things in my own heart to be angry at. Be angry and sin not. I take that as an invitation by God to be angry and outraged over my own sin. First and foremost, before I'm outraged or angry about anybody else's. Yes, we should be the voice for the voiceless. Yes, we should call out tyranny and oppression. And yes, we should stand up for justice. Yes, we should do all those things, but in a way that's healthy, in a way that's productive, in a way that's fruitful and humble. Mental health professionals are now talking about something called hurry sickness. It's a behavioral pattern characterized by continual rushing and anxiety. I mean, who doesn't have that you know? People spend an average of 2 hours a day on social media, non-work related, and people spend an average every day of looking at their phone for 3 hours. Staring at their phone for 3 hours. This is what a doctor wrote. He wrote a book, and it's called Margin. He talks about the reason that people are so spent, so exhausted, so wearied is because they have left something out of their life that people in the old days understood. Margin. And he defines margin this way. Margin is the space between our load and our limits. Your load is what you're doing right now. It's your to-do list. It's the things you're responsible for. It's your execution list. It's all of that, okay? Your duties, all the things you've taken upon yourself voluntarily. And your limits is when you can't do any more. Here's the problem. We don't have any margin in our lives anymore. There's none of that. Our load is our limits. And so when something happens, we get sick, our car breaks down, somebody doesn't show up to serve at church, like we go bananas. Most people live that way. This doctor wrote this book, and this is what he said. How often do I see the effects of marginless living? About every 15 minutes. Into my office on a regular basis comes a steady parade of exhausted, hurting people. The reason these patients come to me, however, is not to discuss their lack of margin. They don't even know what margin is. Instead, they come because of pain. Most don't realize that pain and the absence of margin are related. See, this has physical effects and spiritual effects. He goes on. Do you know families who feel drawn and quartered by overload? Do you know wage earners who are overworked, teachers who are overstressed, farmers who are overextended, pastors who are overburdened, or mothers of young children who are overwhelmed? Chances are the pathogen of marginless living is largely responsible. Something's wrong. People are tired and frazzled. People are anxious and depressed. People don't have the time to heal anymore. There is a psychic inability in our day that prevents peace from implanting itself very firmly in the human spirit. This is a doctor talking. He's not a theologian, but he's saying some profound things that the Bible told us years before he ever said this. We all understand a budget, right? You have a certain amount of money, okay? When you spend more money than you make, there's no margin there. And we all do that too, okay? But let's just say there was no credit card. We know we got this much money, and once I spend that, that's it. So I need to put some cushion and margin in our life. We get that with money. Some of us do. But when it comes to time, it's like, man, we say, yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do that. And it's destroying us. It's destroying relationships. It's destroying our spiritual productivity. It is. It's robbing us of our joy. It's a rot of the soul is what it is. He goes on to say, there's nothing uniquely Christian about the idea of margin itself, but there is something very un-Christian about ignoring it. And I agree with that. Even unbelievers acknowledge this. Listen to this guy. This guy, his name is Tim Creeder, and he wrote an article for the New York Times. He said, if you live in America in the 21st century, you probably had to listen to a lot of people tell you how busy they are. Busy, so busy, crazy busy. It is pretty obviously a boast disguised as a complaint. I thought that was interesting. I hear an unbeliever say that. It's a boast described as a complaint. Almost everyone I know is busy. They feel anxious and guilty when they aren't either working or doing something to promote their work. The present hysteria is not a necessary or inevitable condition of life. It's something we've chosen, if only by our acquiescence to it. It's not as if any of us wants to live like this. It's something we collectively force one another to do. It's really interesting to me to hear him say that. And then this is how he ended his article. He said this. Busyness serves as a kind of existential reassurance, a hedge against emptiness. Obviously, your life cannot possibly be silly or trivial or meaningless if you are so busy, completely booked, in demand every hour of the day. I can't help but wonder whether all this histrionic exhaustion isn't a way of covering up the fact that most of what we do doesn't matter. Now, man, that hurts, doesn't it? I don't think he's talking about your 9 to 5 job. I think he's talking about all the voluntary things we take upon ourselves that just end up distracting us, and they're really unproductive and harmful. This is the last thing, and I am getting to the Bible, okay? This is just a long introduction. Because I want to get your attention. I want you to know that the Bible has answers for the questions that maybe you're too timid to ask sometimes. The Bible has a lot to say about time. And I pray that you're going to be encouraged and helped today. Listen to this. See, this affects children too. There was a study that said teenagers in 2011, teenagers showed the same levels of stress, anxiety, and depression as psychiatric ward patients did in 1950. Now, why is that? Well, here may be one reason. Listen to this. In an Ask the Children survey, researcher Ellen Galinsky interviewed more than 1,000 children ages grades 3 to 12, so honest kids. 3rd graders to 12th graders. One key question she asked was what they would change about their parents' work and responsibilities. The results were striking. The kids rarely wished for more time with their parents. Now, let that sink in for a minute. The kids rarely wished for more time with their parents. I was shocked when I read that. But, much to the parents' surprise, they wished their parents were less tired and less stressed. So in other words, if your parents are going to stay in the condition they're in, they don't really want to spend more time with them because they're always stressed out, yelling, short temper. Check this out. Then she asked the kids to grade their parents in a dozen areas. Most parents got an A when it came to making their children feel important and being able to attend important events in their lives. The biggest weakness, according to kids, was anger management. More than 40% of kids gave their moms and dads a C, D, or even an F for the failure to be able to control their temper. It was the worst grade on the children's parental scorecard. And then this person who did the research concludes by saying this: I think our children are suffering from secondhand stress. By trying to do so much for them, we are actually making our kids less happy. And I would say this: busyness is a little bit like sin. Be killing it, or it will be killing you. And the Bible has some help here. So that was point one. My introduction was point one. Admit there's a problem. Admit there's an issue, and we're all affected by it in different ways. Some of you, everything I read may have hit you square between the eyes. Some of you, there may be another manifestation or another kind of symptom for this busyness. But either way, I pray that you're helped. Does the Bible have answers? Yes, it does. Look at Psalm 90. Here's the second point, okay? Psalm chapter 90. So the first point is admit there's a problem. The second point is number your days. Number your days. Now that sounds a little bit morbid, doesn't it? Number your days because they are numbered. But that's not really what this text means. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Moses wrote this psalm. Did you know that Moses wrote a psalm? He did. He wrote the Pentateuch, and he also wrote one psalm, just one, Psalm 90. And he wrote this when he was on his deathbed, okay? So here's Moses. He's 120 years old. He's not able to pass into the promised land because of his sin and rebellion and disobedience. So he's about to die. And this is a reflection on the last 40 years of his life, which was spent in the wilderness watching the bodies of rebellious Israelites wither and be strewn all over the place, and watching vultures eat their bodies, okay, because of their unbelief. So Moses wrote this, and one of the things he said in verse 12 is really interesting. What would you expect a 120-year-old man to say who's a Christian, who's wrestling with trusting God, believing God's promises on his deathbed? What would you expect him to say? Not this. It's encouraging because it's never too late. Look at verse 12. So teach us to number our days, that we may get a heart of wisdom. Return, O Lord, how long? Have pity on your servants. And in verse 14, satisfy us in the morning with your steadfast love, that we may rejoice and be glad all of our days. You know what Moses is calling us to do here? He's calling us to consider your mortality. The Hebrew, it might be closer to say it that way. It does say, teach us, Lord, to number our days. He's asking God to do something. You know what he's asking God to do? Lord, remind me that I'm a creature. This whole psalm is a contrast between God, he's eternal, he's forever, he's not bound by time and space, and man and woman and children who are. We are bound by time and space. We only have so much time, right? I mean, the ground is level here, guys. We all have 24 hours in a given day. I don't care how rich, wealthy you are, affluent, who your family's last name is. We were all handed the same amount of time, 24 hours in a day. And Moses is asking God, help me to remember that I'm just a mere mortal. Teach me to number my days. Why does God tell us to do this? Is God mocking us? Is he saying, hey, Nana, you're immortal, you're going to die, you're fragile, you're going to blow away, you're just dust in the wind, you don't even matter. Is that what God's saying? No. No, God's not mocking us. He's not poking fun of us. He is calling us to humility, not haste. That's another thing here. Sometimes when we consider, you know what, oh my goodness, I'm 50 years old, over half my life is over, we do something really foolish, right? We want a new spouse or a new car or a new, whatever it is. We have some kind of carnal bucket list. I'm about to die, so I need to climb Everest, coach a little league team, go walk the Great Wall of China. I think I had a slide up here somewhere about that. It's the next one. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen that movie or not, but that's what it's all about, really. It's we're old, we're dying. Teach us to number our days so that we can do stupid things, right? Not that all of those are stupid, you know. If you're an adrenaline junkie and you have the money and the time, be my guest, go for it. Enjoy life. Life is short, right? But that's not what Moses is calling us to here. This is Moses, as a grandfather, you might say, on his front porch with a pipe in his mouth, and he's considering time. He says, Lord, teach me the number of my days. Why? Why is he calling us to do that? Look at the next part. So that we may get a heart of wisdom. Teach me to know that I only have a limited amount of time so that I spend it on the most significant things. I'm spending my time now, right now, today, on things that are going to matter in eternity. You know, even unbelievers understand this, not the eternity thing, but even unbelievers are starting to understand this because they're rethinking and re-expressing the way that we evaluate time. All these books that are written on time management, they understand now you can't manage time. You know that? There's no time hack. You can't manipulate time or even control time. All you can do is control yourself with God's help, right? Check this out. There was a guy named Rory Vaden. He did some TED Talks. He wrote 2 books on time management. This is what he said. Check this out. This is so interesting because Moses said it in Psalm 90 long before this guy did. And I'm pretty sure this guy didn't get it from Psalm 90. It's interesting sometimes when an unbeliever says something that the Bible said years before and they can't make the connection. He said, most people only make decisions based only on urgency and importance. They leave out significance. If urgency is how soon does something matter, and importance is how much does something matter, then significance is how long is it going to matter. Do you understand that? If urgency, let me say that again. If urgency is how soon does something matter, in other words, there's an emergency and I got to do it right now. And a lot of the times we base our decisions on that. And importance is how much does this matter, like paying your electric bill. It's pretty important, right? He says the factor that people have left out for years is how long is this going to matter? And that's what Moses is calling us to. Teach me to number my days so that I can engage in things today that are going to matter 10, 15, 20 years from now. Not just this afternoon, not just tomorrow, not just next week. This is going to make a lasting difference. And I would say especially for parents. Moses is calling us to take the long look. Take the long look. And I think that right there alone would cure a lot of our busyness symptoms that we have because we're doing things, we're engaging in activities. Then in the long run, is it going to really be that significant? That's a question I think we owe it to ourselves to ask. And I want to tell you this as your pastor, because I know how people think. I know how Christians think. I used to think this way. They think, oh great, here comes the punch in the face. Now he's going to start telling us, okay, so Jesus doesn't want you to watch NFL. Jesus doesn't want you to Netflix binge. Jesus doesn't want you to coach Little League. Look, I'm not telling you that at all. I'm telling you this as your pastor and somebody who cares very much for your soul. If you don't ask yourself those questions, you're being spiritually negligent. If you don't ask yourself the question, is what I'm doing, am I obeying what God is calling me to do in Psalm 90? Am I considering my days? Is God helping me consider my days and know, is this a good decision for me to do this? If you don't ask the question, you're being negligent. Now listen to the second half of this. If you answer that question for anybody but yourself, you're being legalistic. Did you hear me on that? I don't have the authority to tell you how you should be spending all the time you have every day. I can't tell you if you spend any more than an hour on Facebook each day, you're being negligent. I can't tell you that because I'm not you. I'm not the Holy Spirit and I'm not the spiritual police. Jeff and I don't chase you guys around. But I think you would be negligent if you didn't ask yourself that question. And you don't need to answer it for anybody other than yourself. I can help you. You know, if we went to coffee, I would say some things like, hey, how important is church to you? If your life is so busy, if you're so weird, if you're so exhausted that you are removing yourself and your family from the regular rhythms that God has put in place for your growth, for fellowship, for prayer, for being challenged, for being helped, for hearing the gospel preached, if your life is so busy you rarely make time for that, I'd be very concerned. I think that's something Hebrews 10 tells us really clearly, right? Don't neglect the gathering of yourselves together. I know I'm preaching to the choir. And if you have a family, if you're taking them out of the regular rhythms for discipleship, I think that would be a problem. But beyond that, no, I don't have a list. If I ever have a list like that, come and talk to me because I've got issues. Okay? There's enough legalism floating around in the world and in the church today. I'm not going to answer that question for every single one of you. But God definitely calls us to ask it to ourselves and help one another when we need help figure that out. So, does that make sense? Does that point make sense? Everybody got a little bit quiet here. I'm not trying to punch you in the face. There's good news too, okay? These are good things. God cares about us. And listen, time is not our enemy. In fact, when you look at what the world says about time, it's really sad. You remember the song Dust in the Wind by Kansas? Yes. That's the only song I can play on the guitar. I'll play it for you someday. Can't play anything else. That's terrible testimony, isn't it? All we are is dust in the wind. I mean, That's a sad song, and that's the way the world thinks about time. It's just buy your time and try to have as much fun as you can because we're all just dust. Is that the message of the Bible? Well, that's the message of Ecclesiastes, right? But Solomon wasn't looking at life through the lens of God either. Everything was vanity, vanity, chasing after wind. The world would say things like, you remember Darius Rucker, the lead singer for Hootie and the Blowfish back in the 90s? What would that be? R&B? I don't know what genre of music it would fit under. But he had a song that he sang called Time. And then the first lyrics were, I almost can't say it without singing the rhythm. Time, why you punish me. Remember that? Like a wave dashing into the shore, you wash away my dreams. Remember that song? You hear what he's doing? He's saying, time is my enemy. It's punishing me. It's dashing my dreams away, washing. He said, like a friend with nowhere to go, you leave me, you walk away and leave me crying. Well, that's how the world views time. You know, time's against us. Time's our enemy. Listen, guys. God created time before sin ever entered the world. Did you know that? Adam and Eve had 24 hours every day in the garden. Time wasn't a punishment that God was inflicting on us at all. And God walked with Adam and Eve in the cool of the garden. They spent their time well. They worked. They rested, they fellowshiped with God, they had children, they were fruitful and multiplied, they kept a garden, and then sin came and all that got distorted and twisted, just like it does in our life. There's another song in the country genre, if you're interested. Tracy Lawrence, Time Marches On. Have you heard that song? It's so sad. Don't even listen. It's not dirty or anything. It's just sad. It's a guy that's reflecting on watching all the people he loves withering away and dying, you know, getting hooked on drugs. It's terrible. But the world, that's the best that they have to offer apart from the perspective that God gives us. This isn't supposed to be a sad psalm. It's supposed to be a sober psalm. It's not supposed to make you psychotic. It's supposed to make you sober. It's not supposed to make you do something in haste. It's supposed to make you be humble. Listen, anytime God calls you to humility, that is a good thing for you. It is a good thing to know that, look, I'm not God. God is eternal. He's not bound by time and space. I'm a creature, and I am. And it's working against me because of the fall, right? That's the truth. Time works against me because of the fall. So anytime, what this song really is Moses asking God for help. It's worship, asking God, help me. I know if left to myself, I will waste time in one way or another. I will waste it, I will squander it, I will neglect it, and then it'll be out. So that's what he's doing here. It's not that God's wanting you to get all radical. Listen, you can't do everything radical. You can't. God doesn't call you to do every single thing you do in your life radical. That's going to leave you wearied and exhausted. And if you're reading books that are telling you to do that, stop it. You know, whenever Solomon said, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might, I think he had in mind there were going to be just a few things your hand found to do. Right? You can't. If every single thing in your life is just over-the-top, radical, 5-star, you're going to be weary, you're going to be exhausted, you're not going to have anything but crumbs left over for serving Jesus. You're going to give him the crumbs off the table of your life because you're wearied and exhausted, you're not following his prescription. Psalm 31:15 through 17 says this, I love this. David says, my times are in your hand, rescue me. That's just a confession. God, my times are in your hand. You're the master of time. I'm not, but you are. And that's good news for us if we belong to Christ, right? He's the Lord over time. And David acknowledges that. He says, my times are in your hand. Rescue me from the hand of my enemies and from my persecutors. Make your face shine on your servant. Save me in your steadfast love. O Lord, let me not be put to shame, for I call upon you. So Moses is doing the same thing. He's saying, Lord, time is yours. I'm a creature. I'm subject to time. So teach me to number my days. Teach me to know it. Moses doesn't ask God to give him more time. Isn't that interesting? He doesn't say, Lord, give me more time. He says, Lord, help me to be wise and to know that my time is limited and I want to use it for your glory. I want to use it for your glory. So this is point number 3, okay? We've got to move quick here. Point number 1, admit the problem. Okay? Point number 2, I forgot what point 2 was. What was it? Yeah, do what Moses did. Number your days. Right, very good. See if preachers get confused. Point number 3, listen to Jesus. This is good news, guys. There's really some good news going here, okay? Turn to Mark 6. Turn to Mark chapter 6. I'm going to already start reading it while you're turning there because we're running out of time here. This is after the apostles were sent out, okay? They were sent out to go through every village to heal, preach, to cast out demons, raise people from the dead. Jesus sent them on that mission. While they were gone, the whole thing with Herod and John the Baptist happened. Remember? Herod had John the Baptist's head cut off and delivered on a platter to his wife. John the Baptist was Jesus' cousin. It's important that you know that, because Jesus was 100% God and he was 100% man, and he cared about his family, he cared about his cousins just like you did, and he just heard word that his cousin had been beheaded. And right about that time, these 12 disciples come back, the apostles. The fact that the word apostle is used here, it's filled with activity, that word. It means sent one. They were on a mission. They were going here, there, and yonder. They were tired, they were weary, but they were excited. And they came back, and they were telling Jesus all the things they did. We pick it up in verse 31, or 30. The apostles returned to Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. And he said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while." Full stop. Wow. We read the Bible, and so often we don't pick up on staggering truths like that. The founder of Christianity just told his right-hand men, the most important movers and shakers in the kingdom, they were just getting started. They were just at tier 1, okay? And Jesus says, "Guys, time for a break. Stop. You've been everywhere. You're tired. You're weary." He said, let's take a vacation. Let's get away. You guys come with me. Don't worry about the healings right now. I know there's still people with leprosy. I know there's demons calling after you. Don't worry about it. We need to get away. We need to take a break. That should shock you, because I would challenge you, find any other religion in the world where the founder says something like that, and you will look in vain. You will look in vain. Because it's do. We got to do more. We got to be better. We got to do it faster. We got to improve. Pull up your bootstraps. Get busy, guys. That's all you've done? Goodness, you've only been to 10 villages? No, time's ticking. We got so much that we're already behind. Jesus doesn't do that. He didn't do it then. He doesn't do it now. What Jesus is telling his apostles then, I want to tell you, he's saying to you right now. If you fit the criteria, this symptom, this marginless living, wearied, exhausted, busyness, fruitlessness, come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while. Just picture Jesus saying that to you right now. Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while. Doesn't that thrill your heart to hear Jesus saying that to you? Rest a while. You're tired. You're weary. You need a break. You need a vacation. And I don't think this is a coffee break. Certainly not a cigarette break, okay? I think this is like a reprieve. You need to get away. And here's the most important thing. Don't miss this. Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while. And who are they going with? Jesus. Just don't leave him out of the equation. That's the important thing here. They went away, just them and their Savior. And he took them away. And here's the reason why. For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. You know, eating was a big deal back then in that culture. Huge deal. Every time they're eating, Jesus is reclining. Eating and resting. You wouldn't even eat in a posture just set up for resting and relaxing. And they hadn't even been able to do it. Have you ever had one of those days at work? You just didn't eat lunch. You didn't have time to eat lunch. And then it turned into the next day. And then before you know it, you're doing takeout. We can understand what was going on here. The demands, the crowds, the enemies, the persecutors, they didn't have any time. And Jesus says, guys, this is not good. This is not good. We got to get away. We got to rest a while. Got to rest. And Jesus is saying the same thing to us. A quiet place of rest. Quiet and isolated. To one of his closest followers to get away from the press. And listen, just mindlessly wandering on social media, I don't think that's the kind of rest that Jesus is talking about. I think he's talking about some serious reflection with him. Doing what Moses did. Number your days. How are you investing in the kingdom right now? How are you using this gift that God gave you called time for him? Sometimes using it for him is taking a vacation. There's one of my favorite pastors' names was Robert Murray McShane. He was the pastor of a Presbyterian church that ran over 1,000 members, and he did everything. And he was an amazing writer, theologian, gifted evangelist. His congregation loved him. They said there were tear stains on the wooden pulpit where he preached. Any sermon you could ever read about him, it would be Christ-centered, I guarantee you. But Robert Murray McShane died when he was 28 years old. You know why? He did not take care of himself. And this is what he reportedly said on his deathbed. He said, the Lord gave me a message, the gospel, and he gave me a horse to deliver it, my body. I've killed the horse, and now who will deliver the message? I know that's a preacher, not all of us can identify with that, but it's the same thing. God called you to be His ambassador, and you know what an ambassador does? It represents the King. What is your life saying about your Savior right now? If you're always weary and stressed out and exhausted and on the brink of disaster, and I know some of that is organic, sometimes our body introduces things like depression, and there's very little we can do about it. We need to, pray through that, see a doctor, get a checkup. But if it's because of the choices that you are making, how to spend your time, and you're just consistently defeated, that's not healthy. That's not good for the kingdom. It's not good for you. John Owen was an eminent theologian and writer, and he was overseeing a college at Oxford in the 1600s, 1700s. And he had so much to do, so much theology to write, so much correspondence, overseeing the chapel, overseeing the college, overseeing the church, that it was said, his biographer said, that he limited his sleep to 4 hours per night. And later in life, he said it was the worst mistake he ever made. Worst mistake he ever made. Guys, listen, there is something refreshing and confessional about curling up in a fetal position for 8 hours every night and sucking your thumb. You know what you're saying? God, I'm not you. I am not you. And this is another gift. This would be a whole other sermon. Sleep is a gift. He gives His beloved sleep. Psalm 127. You are His beloved. He loves you so much, He gives you the gift of sleep. If you sleep soundly, which sometimes I rarely do, get up in the morning and thank God for it. It's a gift from Him. It's a gift. We are weary. I just love that passage. I love that passage in Mark 6, and I hope you do too. And here's the last thing. There's so much more that I could say, guys. I don't want to beat a dead horse. Here's the last thing is remember the gospel. Remember the gospel. What are we going to do about this time thing? Let me ask you this. When is the last day you went 24 hours without wasting a single second? Either with neglect, abuse. How are y'all doing? How's everybody doing on that? This is an application of the good news of Jesus that I probably need to make it more often. Do you guys know what imputed righteousness is? That's some fancy theological words there. Let me tell you what it means. It means righteousness that is gifted to you. It's a gift from God. What is righteousness? It's perfect faithfulness. It's perfect obedience. It's an entire lifetime that was spent, not wasted. It's a life that none of us have ever lived, nor can we ever live on our own. Even though God wants us, He wants us to strive to do that, not to please Him, but because Christ has pleased Him. And listen, I want to apply this part of the gospel called imputed righteousness today. Jesus Christ never wasted a second in His life. It's staggering to consider it. Jesus said no to a lot of things. You know that? Jesus said no to little things, and it wasn't just saying... It wasn't trivial, shallow, trite things that He said no to. There were people that needed to be healed. Remember one morning Jesus went out early, as was His custom, and He prayed, and His disciples were looking for Him. They found Him and said, "Hey, where you been? Everybody in this town's looking for you. There's more demons to be cast out. There's more dead people to raise. Come on, let's go." You know what He said? He said no. Jesus said no to serious needs. Why? Because there was something more important that His Father had given Him to do in the next town. He said, "No. I've got to go to the next town and preach the gospel because that's why I have been sent." Jesus never wasted a word. He never wasted a moment. He never wasted a need. He never wasted an opportunity, ever. And friends and ladies and gentlemen, that just can't be said of us. We're time wasters in a myriad of ways. Even in our best day, there's been some waste, some neglect, some abuse. That's never true of Jesus. Now, I want to tell you the good news about what the gospel says. When you trust in Jesus, you get that entire life of fruitfulness, humility, obedience, and time management. It's a gift to you. You get it. Isn't that good? And because you get His righteousness, you don't have to beat your head against the wall thinking, am I doing enough? Is my meager offering at the end of my life going to be enough for Jesus? No, it won't. But if you're trusting in His, it is enough. That's what the gospel is. It's trusting in Jesus. Somebody asked me this question, profound question, a few weeks ago at lunch. They said, are we saved by the faith of Jesus, or are we saved by faith in Jesus? Oh man, that's profound. Did you hear what they're asking? Are we saved by the faithfulness of Jesus, or are we saved by faith in Jesus? And the answer is yes, both. We're saved in the faithful life of Jesus, and the only way we can access that is by faith in Jesus. You understand? When we tell people to believe the gospel, you are connecting yourself to that free gift of righteousness that God is giving to you. And that's a beautiful thing, guys. That's beautiful. That's why the gospel says this. It says, for with the heart one believes and is justified. Your entire life is declared blameless, and you're declared just and cleansed and forgiven the second you believe the good news about Jesus. So all this time, all the neglect and waste and abuse of time, God cancels all that. He forgives all that. But listen, what does that do? That makes you want to live a productive and fruitful life for Jesus, doesn't it? Not only does Jesus live a perfect life for you, then he lives his life with you. You have both of those. The gospel gives you his forgiveness and it gives you his presence. So you never have to worry about whether or not you've done enough to be accepted. Ever. So your identity is not how busy you are or how productive you are. Your identity is this. You belong to Christ. You are his. You are in Christ. And you are his son. You are his daughter. You've been declared blameless. And God looks at you and sees perfection because of Christ. No other religion in the world offers that. And that's why when Moses, back in Psalm 90, you know what he said? He said, teach us to number our days so that we may present to you a heart of wisdom. Then he prayed this. He said, satisfy me with your steadfast love. Guys, that's the answer to the time crisis. Lord, satisfy me. Fill me up, and then I won't have to do all this frenetic busyness, distracted all over the place. I'll be so filled with your love, I'll spend my time on things that are important to you because those things are important to me now. He changes your heart. You're a new creation. That's what the gospel does. That's the declaration it makes. And you know, here's the other thing. How does ultimately God solve the time dilemma? Do you know one day when we pass from this life into the next in glory, time's not going to be a problem anymore, right? So don't be overly concerned about the things that you don't ever get around to doing in this life, guys. Heaven awaits us. Heaven awaits us with glory and with joy. I cannot wait to explore the wonders and the blessings and the marvels of heaven with my family in Christ. I can't wait.